Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Dancer's Mindset with myself, Isabella. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. Today, we are talking with someone very exciting. She is renowned all over the world for her musicality, stretching time as she dances, and her versatility. She grew up doing all kinds of dance, and it really made her excel later in her ballet career. And that is New York City Ballet principal dancer, Tyler Peck. This has been a hugely inspiring conversation that I have had with Tyler, and I'm very excited for you to hear it today. So let's meet Tyler.
I grew up in my mother's dance studio. Ballet was actually my least favorite. It's the hardest, it takes the most discipline, and it wasn't until I got to the School of American Ballet, I just kind of felt a little bit like, here this is a jazz little baby that's kind of coming in here and trying to fit in with all these ballerinas. When I got into the company, I remember my director saying to me, you are just not afraid to go for it. That is something you learn through jazz. Yeah, I love that because it's you learn everything in class, you work, you train in the studio, you do your rehearsals, and then you go on stage and it's you gotta just let it go and be in the moment. You gotta trust that it's there. It's different to be a professional than it is to be a student. So there's more freedom once you become a professional and you're performing. Of course, there are certain parts that I get to and I'm oh gosh, I gotta nail this turn or do this or do that. But mostly when I'm dancing, I'm not really thinking of the steps, and I am just able to think of the music. Oh, I wasn't classically trained from the beginning, and so I had to be super classical and this and that. But it's really, I just need to be myself, and that's my own Aurora.
So Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today. I know the listeners of the podcast are going to be super excited to hear from you and be really inspired. And from a personal standpoint, I'm really looking forward to really diving into your journey and just hearing more about you and how you kind of think about the process and hearing more about your career. So I'm really excited you're here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, fabulous. Let's start from the beginning, because I'd really love to hear how you were first introduced to dance, because I know you started at your mother's studio when you were 2 years old, so very, very young. But tell us more about exactly how dance was introduced to you.
So I grew up in my mother's dance studio. I'm from Bakersfield, California, and she was my first teacher. I was kind of babysat there, and so as soon as I was walking, I was up in the back of the studio trying to do whatever I thought dance was at that moment. Um, and yeah, it's amazing to think that she was my first teacher and really taught me all my basics. And I just have kind of always had dance in my life from the beginning. I was surrounded by it, and yeah, I just loved it from the beginning. My mom said, I was just up in the back. She taught the advanced students, and when I could take dance class, she put me in, the beginner. But she said I would always just make my way back into her class in the back, trying as best as I could. So yeah, it's always been a love of mine.
Amazing. And already, obviously, you were only 2 years old, but were you kind of already being introduced to many different dance styles at that moment?
Yeah, her studio had every kind of style. It wasn't just a ballet school. She taught the ballet, but it was a jazz studio. I had hip hop, I had lyrical, contemporary, gymnastics. I kind of had everything with her. And ballet was actually my least favorite, funny enough.
Yeah.
I think it's the hardest. It takes the most discipline. And I think as a young dancer, it's easier to relate to music that you would dance to in a jazz class, a pop song, or whatever it is. And, ballet just takes so much discipline and classical music. So it just it wasn't my favorite in the beginning. And also my mom was my teacher. So it was hard because she'd ask who knew the answer to a question. I'd always raise my hand and she like wouldn't call on me. And then I would say, Mom, like I knew the answer and I had my hand raised. And she said, well, I know you know the answer. I need to know that everybody else in the class does. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah, and ballet's not exactly fun at that stage, especially when you have to sort of do all the foundations and make sure everything's correct in your posture, all this kind of thing. So it's no surprise it was your least favorite. For example, like I used to hide under the piano when I was 2 because I was I used to scream and be like, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it. And it's weird how later on in life it becomes completely encompassing of our entire existence when we start like this. Um but I was really interested to see that when you were 7, correct me if I'm wrong, you worked with a former Bolshoi principal dancer, right? Alla Khaniashvili, is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, tell us about that because that's obviously very that should be. I mean, that probably was a rude awakening to Russian training, and yeah, tell us more about that.
So when I was like 6, my mom was like, I want to just be your mom and we need to find you like
Yeah.
best teachers. And it was really great for our relationship. I think that's what's amazing is that I have a mom that I know knows what she's watching, but she's never been like a stage mom. So I'm really grateful that, she kind of went this way so we could have such a good relationship. And I was really, really like into my jazz training. Like I was doing, competitions. I was with one of the best, like, you know, jazz studios at the time. And she said, no matter what you want to do, you need to have the technique, and that comes from ballet.
Hmm.
So she found Alla, and Alla gave me private lessons. And I would do it, I don't even know, maybe like twice a week or something. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember. But Alla was stunning. She's still in my life, which is amazing. But she was so tough. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember saying to my mom, like, she won't even let me do more than like a single or a double pirouette. And, in jazz, I could do like 6 or 8. Like, it was, but
Yeah.
she really just made me do everything really correct. And she gave me an incredible foundation. And I'm so
Mm.
grateful to her um, that she did that, but also just like seeing her. I mean, she had just kind of retired, so to be able to see her still demonstrating was pretty exceptional. And I'm a very visual learner, so I think that
Mm.
that was really amazing to have at that age.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. I mean, yeah, I mean, the Russian dancers are obviously that's my background, and they are very incredible with just. I used to have a Russian coach when I was 9. That's how I started as well, and I would just be mesmerized, even though she was like in her 60s or something. But it's just how they move their arms, and you're just like, wow, they don't have to do anything else. But it's very interesting to hear that that was kind of one of your first, despite your mum one of your first experiences, and after that going into, which we'll talk about obviously in a minute, going to New York City Ballet, which is obviously very different style, but really interesting how she gave you a kind of strong foundation there, which is really interesting. So because you were so amazing at jazz, was it hard for you to then, and what kind of sparked that final, let's say, decision of, oh, ballet's the thing actually I really want to focus on?
I think it wasn't until I got to the School of American Ballet and
Yeah.
something about the repertoire that we got to learn. So I guess something about the balancing ballets. I didn't think that that's what ballet could be. I was like, whoa, this is feels like I'm getting to do like my jazz dances, but just in point shoes. So it felt like, and not really jazz dances, but it just didn't feel like classical ballet to me. And I thought, wow, this is very interesting and exciting. And it also was a challenge for me. At that moment in my life, I had kind of like won every single big competition you could as a jazz dancer. And, the route for me at that moment would have been, staying in LA and probably, you know, I don't know, going into being a backup dancer for a big singer or something like that, or commercials, or And I just didn't want to do that. And this was a challenge for me. And I love to put myself into challenging situations because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is about me, but I just like having to reach for something that I can't really do. And I was determined to become like an actual ballerina and not just, be known as like the jazz arena, the jazz dancer who like came to the school and is, can do all the steps, but she doesn't look like a ballerina.
Yeah.
So I was like determined to kind of immerse myself. And then once I get my mind set on something, I do it like 110%. There's like no in between for me.
Yeah. No, I completely resonate. Once you decide on something, it's like, that's what I'm doing. So after you worked with Alla and before you went to SAB, you worked with New York City Ballet former dancers, um, such as Patricia Neary and Yvonne Munsey. Is that right? How you say
Yeah.
it?
Hmm.
Yeah. So would you say the relationship you had with them kind of, and obviously seeing the Balanchine ballets and being inspired by that, was that kind of really what got you going with the inspiration to go to SAB? And did you already have in your mind, I want to go to New York City Ballet?
I think what's really interesting is that Alla was the one who sent me to Patricia. She
Right.
was leaving for something. I don't know why she was leaving California for a bit.
Mm,
And she said, "There's only one teacher I trust to train you," and it was Patricia Neary. And so she had me go take class with her, and it was so different. But again, like one of those big personalities that just you see them in the front of the room and it's like, wow, this woman she's an incredible force. And
yeah.
then she was the one who took me to West Side, which is where I met Yvonne Munsey. And
Right.
um, from then on, it was, you know, I believe it was Patricia who called SAB. I was going to New York to do the Music Man on Broadway,
Mm,
and um, Patricia was like, I think you should really try to audition for SAB while you're there. And I thought, oh, okay. So I think it was like the middle of like the semester, so not really when you should be auditioning, but I think Patricia maybe called Kay Mazzo and said, I think there's a girl maybe that you should see. I don't really remember exactly how it worked. I just know I auditioned, and then next thing I knew I was at the school for the year while I was in the Music Man on Broadway. So I was like 11 and I did that for a year. That was my first entrance into School of American Ballet.
yeah. Amazing. And when you were there, did you ever think, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be? Like this is where I feel most at home. This is where I'm destined to stay and to dance one day.
I think that it was a moment my dad took me and my mom to see the New York City Ballet Nutcracker while we were here. And it was at that moment that I said to my dad, I was like, Daddy, I want to dance on that stage someday. Like, I just could not get over. It's crazy. I had never seen a Nutcracker before, which is strange, right? For a
Yeah.
ballerina. It's for their first experience to be, at 11 years old, because I feel like so many grow up in the
yeah.
Nutcracker.
Most dancers, I think.
Yeah. So this was the first thing I saw, and for it to be like George Balanchine's The Nutcracker was pretty amazing at New York City Ballet, and I just remember being like, "Wow, I want to do that."
Yeah. And I think, obviously, going back to what you just said before about decision making, probably even if it was subconscious, you saw the ballet and you kind of then set that image in your head of one day I'll be doing that. And then
Yeah.
every day is like a journey towards that. Um, yeah, amazing. And obviously, then you went to New York City Ballet. And I want to talk a little bit about changing subject a little bit about confidence within yourself and comparison to others, because I read also that that was something initially, if not anymore, you suffered with that a little bit, comparing yourself to others and ideals and things like that. And tell us a little bit more about those sorts of feelings and those insecurities you had as a young dancer.
Yeah, I think I just kind of felt a little bit like here this is a jazz little baby that's kind of coming in here and trying to fit in with all these ballerinas who have been studying, since they were like, I don't know, 6 or something in solely ballet. And, I also moving from California to New York was really challenging. The personalities are very different. Also,
Mm.
in jazz, where jazz class is much more free a little bit than sort of a ballet class. So, not that we would talk a lot, but I could say something to my friend in the back of class, and here I remember, like, I just said, "Oh, that's like really hard." I remember to one girl in the back, and she was like, "Don't talk to me." Not that she didn't like me; she ended up becoming my best friend, and we're very close, and we always laugh at this moment. But she was like, we don't talk here. Don't talk
Yeah.
to me type of thing.
Walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it was just, trying to focus on myself and making myself better was the way I kind of like went about it. Because I think ballet is so demanding and difficult, and there's always going to be someone who has something that you don't have that you wish you had, but you just can't go down that path because it's never ending, that path. Someone's got better feet, better this, better that, but then it's like you just have to remember, like, I always say everybody has different gifts.
Mm.
And if I had this extension and this, these crazy feet, like maybe I wouldn't be able to do the things that I am able to do, like move so fast or have good footwork, or maybe the musicality would be more challenging for me. I don't know. I just think that, um, I think the best way to like, I always say like the best way to like be successful is to just like focus on being your personal best. Because for me, I'm my biggest critic for sure. I'm always thinking I can be better. So yeah, I just tried to focus on that.
Mm. I think the difficult thing with ballet is we have very clear, especially when we're young, we kind of set ideals in our head of what we are expected to be like. And I think with you, what's so unique about you is your talent, but also, how you started. And it's very easy when you're in these kind of intense environments to forget about the amazing skills that you already have yearned and nurtured already. Like, you're obviously an incredible artist in so many ways, and a jazz dancer in particular. And it's kind of finding that moment. And I'm interested to hear if there was a moment for you whilst you were training where you thought, no, do you know what? I've done all this amazing stuff. I have like this real amazing sense of movement. Not that you'd necessarily say these things to yourself, but was there a moment when you were training where you thought, no, I can translate those skills that I've already got to my ballet to kind of help me show more of my unique self and my unique gifts, that maybe that are unlike other dancers, as you say, who have started when they were like 6.
Yeah, I definitely think that when I got into the company, I remember like my director saying to me, like, you are just not afraid to go for it. And it's the truth. I think that is something you learn through jazz. There's this like fearless abandon that kind of is there. And I don't know if I necessarily would have had that if I was just strictly ballet, because if you're doing ballet, you're so worried about constantly like making the right positions, doing everything perfectly. And I think what was incredible that I love about the way I kind of came through dance was that I just learned to dance first. I loved being on stage, which was also something that was, very helpful. I think I had been in competition, so I knew how to perform right away. And I think as
Mm.
a ballet student, you don't always get that many performance opportunities. And
Yeah.
so when I very first got into the company, I felt like really at home performing, and I got in super young. I got in like 15. So had I not had that experience, I might have been very, very intimidated and scared. But I was like, okay, I know how to do this, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it's talking about performing early? I know a lot of kids these days do competitions young. Do you think that's useful for students to get on stage early in their training, despite it being, obviously they're not fully trained and everything, but do you think it's important for dancers to at least like be comfortable early on stage?
It's a good question because I don't really think I've ever thought about it. But when you said it, I do think it's important that kids are in like under pressure and able to perform on stage. Like I do think that that is something that is valuable. I do think it is hard to say too because you learn to do just this one variation or two variation that you work on, and that's not actually really going to help you in the scheme of learning choreography fast or being able to be um, uh, malleable. You get so
Yeah.
used to just doing this one thing one way to win the competition. um, so it's like a little tricky because I think there's a fine balance
Mm,
that one needs to find because, I do think it's important to get on stage. And if you're at a school where you don't get that many opportunities, I also think that's a disservice. So if then competing every once in a while is beneficial, I think you should do it. I just don't think that should be your only goal because I just think that you learn so much. I was talking about this the other day with my physical therapist about how a lot of these competition kids then get into companies and they don't know how to be in a core. Right? You're not
right.
going to get into the company and become a principal dancer overnight. I mean, hopefully it could be fast for you if that's your trajectory, but you have to first learn to be in the group. We all have
Yeah.
to go through that. And that's something you learn from being in class and being around people, how to navigate space, navigate personalities. So I think that is I think there's a pro and a con, I will say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Pros and cons. I mean, cons in the sense that the focus is on winning, whereas you were heavily focused on just dancing and performing, and I think there needs to be a balance there. I'm interested to know, because you had that lovely skill of, and just that innate ability to just go for it and dance, when you were kind of going back to school a little bit, but when you were then very much in the ballet schools, was there a moment where that was kind of lost at all, when there was more focus on doing things exactly right and technique and stuff, or were you always able to stay true to that kind of go for it personality?
No, I remember like when I got into SAB, they're very specific about like do two turns and finish. So I felt like I had kind of lost my turns for, I could always do a double turn, but then it was like I all of a sudden couldn't do what I used to be able to. Like literally if you had told me like do 8 pirouettes, I could do 8 pirouettes like that. And then I got into the SAB and I thought, oh my gosh, now I can literally just do a double. So when I got into the company, I like made it a sort of pact with myself. I was like, okay, every time I go, at least to my good side, I'm going to go for three, not two. And
Yeah.
just to make myself do it. And, but that was like something I had to do on my own because I was like, oh, I'm feeling very stuck. And yeah, maybe my position and everything is better now, but I still need to be able to, or I wanted to still be able to turn kind of the way I used to. And so
Yeah.
that was something I do think that, the technique and everything gets better, but, it is so structured that it was hard for me to find that still just in the school.
Yeah, no, really interesting. And it's very unsettling when you feel like you're losing something, and you're losing an ability. And I think as well, obviously, we're going to talk about your amazing musicality and in detail soon. But I think as well, it's in your nature to want to turn with the music and kind of, really use up the music. And there's a certain amount of turns that can take up, etc. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit about performing, because obviously, in this theme we're talking about of going for it, do you ever or did you ever get nervous before performing? Is that something you deal with, or do you feel kind of quite confident before you go on stage?
I think I would get the normal nerves, like little butterflies in your stomach, kind of, here it goes kind of thing. But I was so used to it because that's all I did growing up that when I got
Yeah.
to the company, I wasn't so nervous. I find myself more nervous the longer I've been in the company because I have more performances to kind of compare
Hmm.
myself to, So um, there are certain ballets. Really, the one that makes me the most nervous is Sleeping Beauty. I'll never not get nervous for that. That's the one I would say, I have lost sleep over. I sometimes am like, I don't want to go out there, that kind of thing. But every other ballet, I just get normal nerves. Like I see people that really have debilitating, nerves before shows, and I think, oh my God, that would be miserable to have that feeling that I have for Sleeping Beauty every time you go out there and perform. And I know there are people that are like that. So I think I've been quite lucky in the sense that I'm more excited and like, yeah, a little nervous, but nothing that's debilitating in a way.
Yeah, no, I think that's the unhelpful, very unhelpful type of fear. But I was reading about you, and one of the quotes that came up, which seemed very appropriate for this, was one of your mentors, Heather Watts, is that right?
Yeah,
She said, you learn the rules to then go on stage and break them,
yeah,
which I thought was so great, and kind of that really has that go for it attitude, like go out there and break the rules kind of thing, which
yeah.
I think you definitely have carried with you. Like you definitely do. It always looks like when you perform that you're really just so in the moment and enjoying it and going for it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that because it's like, you learn everything in class, you work, you train in the studio, you do your rehearsals, and then you go on stage and it's like you got to just let it go and be in the moment. You got to trust that it's there. And what's funny is like I think sometimes she thinks I can be a little safe. So what's fun is that she still kind of pushes me to go out there and be like, you know, don't do it for anybody else. Do it for you and just dance. Not there's no right way. Yeah, I love that. You learn the rules to break them.
Yeah, I think that's great because I don't know. I mean, I definitely suffer from this. There's just that, and I know you confess you are a perfectionist as well. But there's a kind of sort of curse of I must be perfect all the time, and it's very sort of difficult when you take that on stage because you feel like you have to do things in a very perfect way. And once you let go of that, or you're sort of technically free enough to be able to let go, especially with ballet, which is so technical. I think that's when you can really, shine through. I want to talk now about one of your major gifts. There's so many, being musicality and talking about that. And first of all, I just want to hear from your own words. How would you define? It's probably quite a big question. How would you define musicality in a dancer, for example? Like if you were looking at a dancer and you said, oh, that's a musical dancer, how would you define that? What exactly would you be noticing or looking for?
Hmm. Like I'm not very good at getting compliments, but I will say like I think that this explains it. Like somebody once told me this and I was like, okay, I'll take that one. And it was like she said to me, I don't even have to hear the music to be able to know what it sounds like when I watch you dance. And I thought that was so beautiful. Like, and that's kind of what I think of the dancer is like the extension of the music in a way.
Hmm.
And for me, it tells you how to dance. I think it tells you how to feel. It's not like do I smile, do I not smile? Am I sad? Am I not sad? Like to me, I,
Yeah.
I feel it so much within myself that I just kind of let it go with whatever sound or, you know, like the musicality within me. And even like with just choreographing just recently, that's like all I do is I listen to the music and then I try to choreograph steps that literally, if they could have a sound, like that's what it would be. So the music for me is such a big part of everything I do, and it's not something that I like try
No.
to do, but it just that's what moves me. That
Yeah.
is what moves me, and it always has. My mom said, when I was young and I was like 3 years old, that I could remember like a 3 minute dance, and I was just like always like on the rhythm, musical, like. So I think I don't know if it's because I grew up just constantly around music or not, but I do think also my jazz background really helped
Yeah.
with musicality for sure. Because there's just so many different sort of, it's a bigger variety, I think, of sounds when you're dancing to something than purely classical music in the beginning, at least. I mean, now I'm
Yeah.
able to find it in classical music too, but I think it takes a more mature ear in a way, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that was kind of my answer. Did I answer your?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think everything you're saying is making total sense. I think a lot of your ability is very innate. And how I started as well with ballet is with music. My dad used to play Rite of Spring in the lounge. I mean, a bit intense, but I used to kind of just love the drama of it, and a lot of dancers start ballet, I don't know, from watching a ballet, but I also started from feeling something with music and then wanting to move the body in a certain way. So in that way, I completely resonate with you. It makes sense. What I'm really interested to hear your opinion on is much like artistry, in the sense that, when a teacher might say, be more artistic, to a dancer, and to a certain degree, artistry is also quite innate. But again, with artistry, and I learned this at the Vaganova, because I went to Vaganova, a lot of, even though I had this kind of deep desire within me to emote through my movements, to a certain degree, I had to be taught how to bring that out with my body and make it look as expressive as possible. But with musicality, when a teacher, for example, says to you, be more musical to a student, I mean, it's kind of such a broad thing to say. And also, what does that mean? So, if you were a student, or if students are listening, because there'll definitely be students listening, and their teacher's saying to them, you need to be more musical, how would you translate that so they could improve it?
It's true. I think for me, the worst thing is to see somebody dancing, no matter how beautiful it is, but it's like they're not listening to the music. And
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to be like, don't you hear it? Because we all hear it differently. Um, but I don't know. Somebody explained it to me. And this is also different. It's different to be a professional than it is to be a student, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so there's more freedom once you become a professional and you're performing.
You can play with your nuances more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're a student and it's more musical, it's really just, finding and listening to the music. Like you really have to listen. It's not just like, um, you know, I don't know, or really hearing, not just listening. If I'm trying,
Yeah.
it's like you really have to become comfortable with the music and whether it is a variation you're dancing. I mean, even it's so lucky we get live music normally in a ballet class,
Yeah.
where I never got that growing up as a jazz dancer. So I always say whenever I'm teaching and students are not doing like the steps on the music, I'm like, we have a live pianist here, like we have to be grateful. We have to listen to what she's doing, and it's a way to train your ear, sometimes things will be slower, sometimes they'll be faster, and you have to be able to be bendable and able to kind of go with the flow. And so I
Mm.
think maybe that's what it would be like if somebody needs to be more musical, like they have to be not so stuck in their way, be able
Yeah.
to sort of find the flow of the music. But it is a tricky thing. I don't know if I have a very good answer for what that means.
It's hard. it's hard because, again, it's very difficult to translate when it's very innate in you. I guess my question is, can you teach it? Like, I don't think you can teach it to the level that you are musical. Much like you can't teach someone to have soul. Like, they either have it or to that degree or they don't. But it's like, I was very interested to ask you that question, because it's like, can you teach it to a level that is kind of a very good level, or is the innate ability extremely important here?
I do think you can teach it, but I do think your teacher has to be very musical. I
Yes.
feel like it's really hard to teach something when you can't express it. You need
Yeah.
to be able to see it to kind of understand. You can't just say to a student, be more musical. You have to give them an example.
Mm.
And I did this master class, dance master class on musicality. And
Yes.
I kind of go through the steps of how I do think you can kind of learn. But I it's like when a pianist hits a note on, it's different than like a chord. And I think that that is kind of the difference in also maybe how you hear the music and what it then tells you to do. So it is very, it's tricky, I think, but I do think you can get better at it. I just think you
Yeah.
have to have a good example to kind of show you. You can't just be like, be more musical and then expect the student to understand what that means.
Yeah, my partner's a musician. He's a bass player, and I make him watch ballet sometimes. And and it's funny, as a musician, they think that to most of the dancers, because he knows nothing about ballet really. Like, but I've taken him to some performances, and I've shown him you dancing before, and I've tried to get from a musician's opinion, about dancers. And I took him to the ballet once, and he was like, it was just a company here, and he noticed that it just looks like they're dancing all over the place. Like, they're not. It doesn't look like they're either together or at one with the music. Like, they kind of just look like they're all over the place. And obviously, to me, they look like they're on the music, but to him, they're like, no, 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 they're just all over the place. But when I showed him you, I was like, okay, but what about this? I was like, what about this dancer, because she is known for her musicality? And he was like, oh no, like, she's getting it, she gets it.
Oh, that's so nice. Tell him thank
Yeah, yeah, I will. And I was like, yeah, she gets it. But it's your ability to kind of stretch time, to kind of, and I was thinking about this in relationship to technical ability and technical strength, because I was thinking, because you're so strong as well, you're so strong a dancer, you also are able to show that through your body, and so would you agree in the sense that you need to be extremely strong technically in the first place to even be able to play with the music as much as you can do? For example, you hold your balance, and then you do a really quick in between step into some dynamic turns, whereas you can only really do that if you are extremely strong with your technique.
It's true. I feel like once I was teaching a student and they couldn't even think about the music because they were thinking about the technique.
Yeah.
No. And so I do think that there is a sense of it's easier if you have the technique that you can kind of bank off of in a way, so
Yeah.
it's like, when I'm dancing, I of course there are certain parts that I get to and I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta nail this turn or do this or do that. But mostly when I'm dancing, I'm not really thinking of the steps and I am just able to think of the music. So I will say, yeah, I think it's a lot easier if you can sort of count on the technique, but that's also what it means by like learning the rules and then breaking them. Like you do the work in the studio so that then you can go on stage and just kind of be free and dance. But somebody also spoke to me about like Bill Forsyth always talks to me about, like like a rubber band, like stretching time like that, like pulling it as far away as possible, and then like what will happen, because you have like an 8 count, say an 8, to do a step, a phrase in, and like where 1 is and where 8 is, but you have so many options to get from 1 to 8, and that's like something really fun to try and play with. And sometimes when I did something with him, then I watched myself and we were like, is that in fast forward? But it was just the illusion because I had kind of stretched. So then I had to make up the time. And then it looked like I almost couldn't dance. Like I was like, I don't know if I moved that fast, but I definitely did. It wasn't sped up. But I think in a way, like the musicality and stretching time actually makes it more free because I have danced a lot of things that I think, oh my gosh, they're so fast. I can't move that fast. But then when I start playing with it, it's like then all of a sudden there's more time. And it's like, how does that happen?
Yeah. No, it's incredible. And you very much see that when you dance. And I guess I get I want to say like a kick out of it. Like do you really enjoy do you really enjoy doing that when you're doing these? I feel like also, is this easier for you to do with things like Forsyth and the Balanchine works, as opposed to, do you find this a harder thing to do when you're doing like classics like Sleeping Beauty?
Yes, definitely. Just because I didn't grow up doing that. A lot of students, they grow up doing all these classical variations and then they get to it in the company and they're like, oh, it's so easy. I've talked to some of my friends at ABT and they're like, oh my gosh, theme and variations and chai pa and these things like scare me. But then I could do Sleeping Beauty and I'm like, what? Like it's so
Yeah.
insane to me. But yeah, I think what I've had to do with say Sleeping Beauty was think to myself, okay, I need to feel like I dance theme and variations, how I do that in this. Because I
Mm.
think I've made up in my head, oh, I wasn't like classically trained from the beginning. And so I have to be super classical and this and that. But it's like, really, I just need to be myself. And that's my own Aurora. Yeah, I want to try to always get the style right and the feeling. But it wasn't until I finally was able to sort of like dance it the way I wanted to that I was able to actually like enjoy it and focus on like telling the story as opposed to just like hitting the balances and doing the technical aspects, even though obviously I stress it out every time I dance it. But the bigger picture was like, I need to tell the story. Like that's what people are coming here to see, the story ballet.
Yeah. I think it all, keeps coming back to sticking to your own unique self and what you can offer and your personal gifts. I think the classical ballets, it's no surprise that they scare you. I mean, they're scary for a reason. They're the classics. Whereas, the other works, it's much easier, I feel, to kind of completely make it your own because the steps are very diverse and everyone can do it slightly different. And so, yeah, that makes total sense. I want to talk a little bit about your confession that you're a perfectionist.
Yeah,
Um, has that ever? It can be like a good thing. I think a lot of us are perfectionists. Like it can be a good thing because it makes you very ambitious and very determined and very focused. But has it ever kind of stopped you in your progress in any way, or held you back because of any kind of overly perfectionist mannerisms?
definitely. I think that um, you get to the point of wanting to do everything so perfect that you kind of forget that the audience doesn't really want to see a perfect performance. They want to see somebody that is living in the moment and actually dancing. And sometimes the most exciting things are actually in those moments where it doesn't go perfectly right and like what's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I would say is it kind of holds you back. I think that perfectionism is amazing as a student because of course you need some sort of that to have the drive to continue to get better and improve. And I definitely have that. But there have been performances that I watch look back and I think, oh, I was trying to be so correct. I was taught it this way and is that really the way though that I would actually do it and want to do it. And I just think that I learn a lot from sort of, like I said, watching, and even if it's watching myself and things I think, oh, like I just look like I'm trying to be so perfect instead of like dancing. And I think that
Mm.
that is one of the biggest lessons that you learn maybe a little later in life when you're more mature.
Yeah.
It would be something I would tell, because you don't want to tell a student not to be try to reach for perfection, because I think that you
Yeah.
need that sort of you need a competitive drive, not to
Yeah. And
the point where you know can't even live or dance because you're trying to be so perfect. Like that's something that's definitely, again, like I would say, debilitating. But I think it is important to find the balance there as well, of keep striving to get better and improve, but also it's that, like, break the rules and let it go, because you can tell a dancer who's sort of like just doing the steps as opposed to somebody who's like letting the ballet or the piece like overtake them.
yeah, do you think, obviously, like you just mentioned, students to a certain degree having trying to be perfect is kind of necessary to improve, because again it leads to technical freedom, which leads you to be able to express yourself as you want to. Do you think to a certain degree it's kind of necessary to be a perfectionist or have these perfectionism traits to kind of be able to really improve? Because I'm trying to think about myself, and I'm thinking in school I was 100% a perfectionist, like, obsessed. um I'm thinking, if I was kind of not a perfectionist, I didn't care as much, I don't think I would have reached as good as I got. I think it's something that later on, like you said, it's helpful to kind of let go a bit once you have that base. But tell me what you think.
No, I agree. I think it's like a fine line, right? There are some people that are such perfectionists. I mean, I when I got into the company, I'm not even joking. If something went wrong, like on stage, and I mean went wrong to me, like nobody else would even be able to see it, I would be upset for like 2 weeks about it. Like I would not let it go. And it was like that's so just unhealthy and not productive. Not productive in the way that those next 2 weeks I could have gone out on stage the next day and just, you know, redeemed myself by not doing exactly the same thing and just letting go. But I was just so tunnel visioned that I could not get over myself for making that mistake.
Yeah.
And, um, now trust me, I still get upset if something goes wrong, and not even like wrong where I think the audience would gasp kind of thing. But I think that that is also why I continue to get better. I don't know. I always think
Mm.
of myself as a student. I say, and I think anybody who can't take a correction or thinks that they've kind of reached their full potential, that's just like a curse to stop growing. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think it is a lot easier in the sense that you are able to kind of say that later on in life as opposed to when you're a student. But then
Yeah.
you see those students too that are like, you know, so sharp at the bar, like with their neck constantly like so tight and almost shaking with fear, and you're like, okay, that's also really not beneficial. So
Relax, girl.
yeah, relax.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't teach you how to dance. Like in a way, I wish that every ballet dancer, whether they wanted to do jazz or not, had to go into a class and just do it. Because I think it would like make that they might be terrified, but it'd be really good to like just shake them up, do something that makes you go out of your comfort zone, and just like be able to sort of like move.
No, completely. I mean, I remember when we had contemporary at Vaganova, and we all just looked ridiculous, because like we were used to like doing, extremely head to chin up, all this stuff, and then we were like trying to shake down below, just like so stiff, and I was just like, wow, we're really not good at this. So, and I think it's so important, which is why also I love what you're doing with your intensives, how, because obviously another thing you focus a lot on is being a versatile dancer, and being able to do, and it really does help your ballet. even when I returned to London later and just started like doing my own thing and was going to drop-in classes and stuff, but my ballet got better, like because I removed myself from being extremely just strictly ballet, and I became more free. And I think it's so important, and yeah, it really makes a huge difference. And so maybe it should be more a part of school's curriculum, even to, maybe it can't be all the time, but occasionally, there should be like jazz workshops or something like.
Yeah, I think just to get, so much new choreography now is happening, and
Yeah.
in order to be in a company, you have to be able to do all sorts of things, which was, I'm very grateful for my background, because pretty much as soon as I got into the company, like every new choreographer that was coming, I would be in their works, because that was honestly what I was better at that moment. But so that's why I think it's important to be versatile, just because you don't know what you're going to be asked to
Mm.
do. So I think it's really important to kind of put yourself in those uncomfortable positions, maybe like by taking a class that you would never want or think you would want to take. But I think it's good just to kind of for the freedom of learning to dance, as opposed to just being perfect and hitting perfect positions.
Yeah, and that continuous theme of continuing to grow as a dancer. And I think when you're constantly, when we get sort of comfortable in our ballet training and our ballet world, um the more and more we stay in that world, the harder it feels to go out of it and like go to a different class or something. But I think getting out of your comfort zone is so key to growth, not just as a dancer, but also just as a person, as a human being, to experience new things. Um, and so, yeah, that's another thing that just makes you very unique, and such a good message to young dancers out there. Because I do think as well, it's kind of like having more to life than just the ballet, and it kind of makes your ballet better because you have more to your life. And obviously, I'm actually going to talk about that in a moment, because with your experience with injury, especially when you had your bad injury with your neck, which took you out for a while, and there was questions whether you to be able to dance again. It was very scary for you. Um, but it made you realize there was more to your life and more to you, right? Tell us a little bit about that experience, kind of finding yourself outside of ballet.
Yeah, I think if somebody like me, you've grown up in dance your whole life, that when it's kind of taken away from you for a long period of time, and the thought of maybe not being able to dance again, you're like, whoa, like what am I? What am
Yeah.
I if I'm not like the ballerina or the dancer or this? Um, but I have to say that I was very lucky that my family gave me like a very good foundation and support, which I know is not always the case. And I was very lucky that they always kind of made sure that I, went to school dances, and made sure that I was always in regular school instead of, homeschooled. And those were things that really helped me, because it kept me as sort of normal in a socialization type thing, type setting, that I think really helped me as a person. And so I, like a friend of mine says, I love ballet. And I would say, it's funny you would say that. Like I would say I love to dance. Like I love to dance. I do love ballet, but I love to dance. That's like the bigger thing. And I think, when it was taken away, I really had to focus on myself. I had to focus on areas that, were hard to talk about, whether it be, personal, like a personal relationship that ended for me at the time that was really hard to navigate. Um, and just, we're so, as you said, like perfectionists, as when you get injuries, you just want to know when it's going to get better. Like even if it's 2 years, you just want to hear in 2 years you're going to be able to dance again. I
Yeah.
mean, even if that though that would suck, at least you had some sort of, we're used to kind of fixing everything, like giving the choreography and then doing it. go over there. Yes, you do it. Tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. So what was hard was that with this is there was like a big unknown. It was
Yeah.
you don't know if this is going to get better. You need surgery, all kinds of things, and I had to really live with the fact that I didn't know what was going to happen. And I feel like it wasn't until I was able to sort of cope with that and be okay with that I really didn't start that was the moment where I started healing. That I had to be like, okay, I just got to kind of let my body do its thing. And hopefully it will heal. If not, I'll have to get this surgery and see where it goes. But it was, it's hard. I don't have much patience. It's something I really have to work on. I feel like that would be a quality that probably like a lot of dancers don't really have.
Yeah, no.
So it's hard when something like that happens, and that's what you have to do. You have to be patient. You have to like give in to the unknown, and you have to kind of focus on other areas of your life that make you happy.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back such a different dancer, and it's going to be for the better because you're going to have more depth to your dancing. You're going to have more artistry to bring because obviously, like those life experiences only enhance, you know, your dancing on stage. But at the moment, it doesn't seem like, it seems like the world's ending.
Yeah, I mean, I had some bad injuries myself, and I always I want to hear from you in particular. You mentioned it changed your dancing. In what way in particular did you feel it changed? Like literally, did you work hard physically during that time in what you could, or was it more kind of mental how you thought about things?
I think it was more mental. I think it was more like I was more vulnerable. I was able to bring that more to the stage, which is maybe like a feeling I didn't really know. I was able to be um, okay with, I don't know. I think when you're a young dancer, and especially with me, I got in the company. I was like the speed and the technician. Used to
Yeah.
doing things fast and just getting it done. And I think once I came back from my injuries, I had more generosity sort of to give. I was more grateful to be dancing. I remember coming back and doing the Sugar Plum Fairy, and I remember doing my variation and just, being able to really feel the like angels around me on the stage, and I was just more gracious. And it wasn't something that I was never gracious before. It's not that, it's just like there was a different feeling I had. And also just being able to tap into different emotions when you're doing, a story ballet and things like that. I was just able to kind of bring so much of my life into my dancing.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question, which is how important do you think it is to have the downtime and have the experiences outside? Because ballet dancers, especially I think when they're younger at the start of their career, it seems like no, I can't have a life. This is life outside. That is, I have to just focus on the ballet, and it's very hard for them, I think, to realize that not only is rest good but also other experiences are good. I mean, how do you, for example, you're such a busy principal dancer, and you go all over the world dancing, so you're busy. How do you, when you have the time, your free time, how do you like to spend your free time?
It's funny, I would say that I think I was better at that when I was younger than I am now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just because I think that my parents were really, like I said, it was really important to them that I stay as normal of a kid as possible while
Yeah.
having my challenging schedule. And I think that that was really important, to like have best friends. My One of my closest friend I've had since first grade, and she doesn't dance, and it's really nice to have that perspective. But it's so hard. I mean, now with my schedule and the things I'm dancing, it's like, after the show, I come home and I rest and I take care of my body so that I can be dancing at the highest potential the next day. And, I think that that does come with also like age and needing to just like take care of your body like a bit more, say, than when you're younger.
Yeah.
Everything feels and you think everything's perfect. But I do think it isn't very important. And I think that, that's why I know like a lot of kids homeschool, and I understand because the schedule's so difficult. I mean, I had to leave school at like 1 o'clock every day to get to dance. So I missed like the second half of school, but it was just putting myself and having my parents put me in that situation of being surrounded by kids who didn't dance and doing normal things, like I think really, really helped me.
Mm.
And not saying that homeschooling is bad. I just think that I'm really grateful that it was not that for me, because
Yeah.
I'm I'm able to socialize with people in a much different way, I think. And
Well, I think it's important. Yeah.
yeah, I do. I do think it's important. I think that there's definitely not one way to do things. I'm not saying that my way is the only way, but I am grateful that I had that sort of childhood in a way. Even though I always say I didn't have a childhood, but
Yeah.
it's like it's I guess I didn't feel like I was sacrificing because I love dance so much. But when I look back on it, and people are like, "Oh, with vacations, and do you remember this and that?" And I'm like, literally, all I remember is like being in the car for 3 hours, going to dance, dancing, and coming back and doing my school. Um, but
Yeah, that's full on.
yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, we did it like 4 or 5 days a week, 3 hours there, 3 hours back.
Yeah, and your grandma drove you, right?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she's a good grandma.
She is a good grandma. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, let's talk before we round up. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. You're so talented. You've gone into acting, writing books, designing a dancewear collection. You've been on Broadway. Are you looking to expand into other creative fields? Kind of. You've done choreography as well.
Yeah, I just had my first ballet premiere at New York City Ballet, so it was a big
Amazing.
deal. And I think, I never really like set like myself like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's kind of what I think has been so wonderful is everything has sort of kind of happened really organically. Like I didn't ever think that I was going to choreograph, let alone for my home company. But somebody gave me an opportunity, and I thought, okay, this will be a challenge. Who knows if I'll be good at it, but I'll give it a try. Same thing with the books. It was like I didn't set out to be like, oh, I want to write a children's book. It was my friend and I were playing with like a little poem about Katerina Ballerina. And then I was like, I think that there is something here and a lesson that like would be really awesome for children and students to kind of learn. And that's the same thing with the dance wear. It was like I started out as just like an ambassador. And then, I thought to myself, I mean, who knows better what people want to be in a leotard than the people that are actually in it every single day? Like I
Yeah.
wear a leotard more than I wear street.
Normal clothes. Yeah.
Yeah. And, can we not just find one? You don't have to like constantly pick or pull up, So for me, that's where that kind of went. And I didn't know if they would be any good, but I thought, let's give it a try. So I don't know. I think I'm just gonna kind of see where things go as opposed to.
Yeah.
But I do. I love being busy. I love challenging myself. So I'm always looking for the next thing. I mean, I've been injured right now, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go back to school.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know. I sometimes need to just chill, but I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I can't chill. In the lockdown, I was like, right,
Yeah,
let's get to work.
me too. I had an amazing COVID. You know,
Yeah, me too.
I loved being with my family. I loved getting that time with all of us together, and I loved connecting with so many dancers. Like during my turnout with Tyler classes, that was like such a
I did have a look at them
me
a few
too.
times. Yeah, yeah. And your studio setting looks so nice with the kind of there was a really nice background. Like it was really nice. Yeah,
I'm
nice
here in
space.
the kitchen. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. Oh, well, Tyler, listen, it's been amazing to chat with you. And I'm sure a lot of young dancers have taken away a lot of amazing advice. And kind of, I guess, the overall thing I've taken from you today is how much, you'll really benefit from breaking the rules a little bit and going for it and not being afraid of opportunity, and try and really kind of taking your unique self and showing that to the world, because obviously, that's what you've done in leaps and bounds, and the world is benefiting from that. And so it's been a huge pleasure to chat with such an amazing artist such as yourself, and I really appreciate you giving us the time today.
Thank you. I hope you all enjoy listening to it, and
We did.
good, good, good.